Throughout the last 20 years, I've been very proud and honored to be a friend of Hillary Clinton and to have supported her candidacy for president both in 2008 and 2016. I've never been more proud of her and honored to be one of her supporters than I was just a few minutes ago when she delivered a concession speech with such class, such dignity, and such love for this country, and such magnanimity that I'm only going to hope I can emulate that in some way this morning. She lost an election in the Electoral College. Looks as though she is going to narrowly win the popular vote. She won the vote here narrowly in Minnesota, but she accepted the results of that election. And there was never any doubt that she would do so. And so following in that good example, I too accept the results of the election as it relates to Minnesota and the country. Minnesotans are very narrowly divided. That was clear in the vote for president, very clear in the vote for a number of the contested congressional races. It was very clear in the vote for the Minnesota legislature. We are a closely divided electorate in Minnesota and this country. The question now for all of us who have the responsibility to lead is, are we going to push those divides farther? Or are we going to do what we can to rise above them and to bring people together? Not to suggest that we don't have very significant differences about what we believe is best for Minnesota and best for this country, but are we going to call forth the best in human nature, or are we going to prey, P-R-E-Y, on the worst of human nature? I hope and pray that will begin with President-elect Trump. I hope that he will not carry out the threats that he made against significant numbers of American citizens who understandably today, and they've already expressed to me, are fearful whether they're going to be accepted, whether they're going to be honored, whether they're going to be respected, whether they're going to, the constitutional guarantee of equal rights and opportunities is going to be upheld at the highest levels of our national government. I want to assure them, all Minnesotans, that they will be here, that every American, every Minnesotan is welcome in this state. We need everyone in this state to be successful for the sake of our state and our economic and social progress. And while we'll have our differences in the legislature, I hope the outcome that we'll see next May will be one that serves the best interests of Minnesota. If not, we will, all of us, the legislators and myself, have failed the people of Minnesota, and they don't deserve to be failed. They need and deserve for us to be successful on their behalf. And I pledge that I'm willing to do everything I possibly can to achieve that. Glad to respond to questions.
Governor, are you preparing for an all-Republican legislature at the start of 2017?
It certainly appears that way. I'm assuming that that's the case.
Governor, how much did your comments about MNsure and the Affordable Care Act not being affordable for many people affect the outcomes of this race? Did that propel more Republicans to get elected in the legislature?
I mean, I think the failures of the Affordable Care Act, I spoke the truth. The administration acknowledged that a few days later, 25% increases in the federal exchange. So, I mean, I may have provided the point of the spear, but the spear was handed to them by the rising insurance prices that have afflicted so many Minnesotans and other Americans. I think the failures of the Affordable Care Act and the fact that people have forgotten what the successes are and how precious some of those protections are in terms of no disqualification for pre-existing condition and no lifetime cap on the use of insurance, being able to cover your children until they're 26. Things that now we'll see if the Republicans in Washington are going to overthrow and destroy. But I had no question in my mind that the increased insurance rates here which were attributed incorrectly to Mincher, because those rates increases came from the insurance companies. They didn't come from Mincher. They came from the dynamics of the Affordable Care Act, but they would have been the same insurance rate increases whether we were part of the federal exchange or whether we were part of Mincher. But people, beat on Mincher for their own political advantage, and I believe they probably accomplished that.
Well, Governor, as a follow-up to that, do you think that helped elect a Republican legislature, and do you think it makes it harder then to fix the problem either in a special session or in a regular one?
Well, I called Speaker Doubt this morning, got his voicemail. I congratulated him on his majority, and said that I would. And I spoke personally with Senator Bach, and I said to both of them, I'll hear from you how you want to proceed with the special session. I made a proposal for a 25% rebate for those who don't qualify for the federal tax credits under the Affordable Care Act, and I'm willing to go through with that and wait to see if that's something that they want to pursue. But they have the responsibility now to either accept my proposal or propose something better, or to say that they don't want to proceed.
Have the legislative staff and your staff got together and come up with a proposal like you suggested?
Last Friday. We'll try again. But, again, I feel that I've taken all the initiative on this measure. We put forward a proposal. We've worked hard. We've been working with the insurance companies on a daily basis to work through their problems with administering this. I mean, we have carried the ball all the way, and all I'm asking now of the two legislative leaders to say, are you on board or not? And if you're not, then what's your better idea? Otherwise, are you just not willing to proceed now the election's over? And we'll see. But I think they share that responsibility, and I'm willing to continue to shoulder mine, but I can't shoulder the whole thing, and I need to get a response from them whether they want to proceed. And I will say this, as far as I'm concerned, the special session, if there is one, can be about that issue alone. We're not going to get into the whole future of Mincher and the Affordable Care Act, which we can't affect because that's a federal law. We're not going to do a tax bill because we don't know what the next forecast is going to be. And I'm seriously concerned about the economic future of this state and nation. And I'm not going to agree to a tax bill that was based on last year's forecast, last spring's forecast, when we'll find out 2nd of December whether that forecast holds for the next 2 years. But I think it'd be fiscally irresponsible to, especially if we're going to proceed with a special session to provide relief to those who need it, and I support that. To do a tax bill that had some very good features, but also was a re-election tax bill for all concerned. And similarly, the bonding bill, I don't expect there'll be any resolution of the transportation differences. If there were, I'd support passing a bonding bill so that those construction projects could get underway as soon as possible. But I don't expect that, and we're not going to get into rehashing the issues that caused the stalemates last spring in the regular session, and it made us unable to come to an agreement on the parameters of the special session before the health care issue arose. So that's, if we can keep it limited, defined, if people really want to provide relief, as I do, to people who are being hit with these unacceptably high insurance rate increases, then we'll proceed together. And if not, we'll have to start over again in January.
Governor, were you surprised by the results of the legislative election here in Minnesota? Did you expect the Democrats would do better, or were you expecting an outcome like this and simply hoping for something better?
I thought we'd hold the Senate. I thought the House was going to be difficult because of the demographics. I will be very interested to look at how the legislative candidates did relative to the presidential in their respective districts. My guess is there were quite a few DFL candidates who did better in their district than Secretary Clinton did in their districts. And so they were having to buck this wave of support, especially in greater Minnesota in the 8th and 7th district, with 1st district for Mr. Trump, President-elect Trump. So, I haven't had a chance to evaluate that, but that's my assumption. So, this election was much closer in Minnesota than any of the polls predicted. It was obviously closer and a different outcome than most of the polls predicted for the country. But it's closely divided. The House, I don't know how it's finally coming out. The Senate, it looks like it's going to be, one person. Minnesotans are very closely divided. And there's stark differences between those two groups of Minnesotans and the people who have been elected to represent them, including myself. So, I mean, it's going to be unrealistic for Minnesotans to send a group of people that are closely divided and have very deep differences and expect it's all going to be peace and harmony. It's not. They send us a divided government to here at St. Paul, and they're going to get divided government, for better and for worse. I'll do my best to make it better. I hope that nobody's going to go out to make it worse. But we'll see.
Governor, that sounds like a recipe for another government shutdown.
Well, I'll see. In 2011, I offered to split the difference between, we're $3 billion apart, and I offered to split the difference and meet them in the 50-yard line, and they didn't budge from their position on their goal line. I said it takes two to tango, and I'll do the same here. I won't compromise. I'm not going to concede. They elected with their mandate. I got elected 2 years ago with a 4-year mandate. I'm going to uphold it. I'm going to stand for what I believe in. I'm going to fight for what I believe in. I'm going to work for what I believe in. And they're close to very close to a majority in the legislature who share those values and beliefs. Those who believe they had a mandate to just stampede are going to be very distressed to see the outcome. But I'll work. We have to have a budget. I don't want another shutdown. And I'll do everything I can to, again, find common ground and compromise where necessary on budget numbers. But they're going to have to be willing to do the same. And I would hope that they will learn the lesson. When the last when the last legislative session finished in 2011, the approval rating of the Republicans in the Minnesota legislature was 21%. So if they want to repeat that folly and refuse to compromise and force a shutdown, they do so at their peril.
You've traveled every corner of the state your time as an elected official and heard from Minnesotans on all sorts of issues. Did you consider the close race here in Minnesota? I mean, how will the DFL, how will leaders like yourself respond to the clear message sent by voters? I mean, it seems that a majority of voters, who have felt forgotten or left behind, have elected somebody with no political experience to the highest office. I mean, how do you govern? How do you go about, healing that deep divide that seems to be rural and urban?
I'll do everything I can. I mean, again, with all due respect to President like Trump, I mean, in terms of the country's deep divide, it's going to have to be, he's going to have to lead by example for the rest of us, as Secretary Clinton did this morning, magnificently. And I hope he can show the same magnanimity to all Minnesotans and all Americans, not just his select few. If he does so, if he rises above his campaign rhetoric and governs on behalf of all of America, then I will move forward together. But I don't know whether or not that's the case. I'll be truthful and say I'm very alarmed and frightened for the future of this country. Because if he pushes this divide further and plays on these prejudices and biases that he used to get himself elected, it's going to be very, very destructive for this country and for this world. So I just hope and I pray that he rises above his campaign rhetoric and some of those campaign promises he made and leads for bring this country together. That's what we needed from a president.
Governor, you often hear that the only poll that matters is the poll on Election Day. What do the poll results from yesterday tell you that the voters were trying to tell you and state lawmakers about what they want?
They want change. I think, clearly the polls showed the deciding question often in an election is, people think we're going in the right direction or the wrong track. And by 3-1, people in this country thought we were on the wrong track. So this is a changed election, and President-elect Trump personified the change. People may have projected into that their different views of what they want change to be, but make America great again. It's a very effective slogan. We all want America to be great again. I think America's great now, but it can certainly needs improvement, and it needs improvement for a lot of people who felt that their lives were not as good as they were a decade ago, economically, in terms of their economic stability, in terms of their retirement. And they're putting their faith in someone who promised that he had the answers to make America great again. So, and as I say, despite that, and despite that historically it's very challenging for one political party to carry the presidency beyond an 8-year term, Secretary Clinton narrowly, it appears, won the popular vote. So again, it was the message is this country is very deeply divided. And it's, but there's a shared desire, I think, on the part of everybody for economic progress, for social harmony. And there may be a few outliers here in Minnesota and nationally who want to prey, P-R-E-Y, on our differences. But I believe that the vast, overwhelming majority of Minnesotans, regardless of who they voted for president, want to see this state and country succeed. They care deeply about this state and this nation. They care for themselves, for their children, their grandchildren. And it's incumbent on all of us as citizens now to do our part, to speak out when necessary, to say we don't want any more hate rhetoric. We don't want any more hate language. We don't want any more threats against people who are rightfully here just because they're different of religion or color or nationality. That we're one Minnesota, all of us together, and we're one country, all of us together. We rise or fall together.
Governor, were you surprised by Donald Trump's appeal in Minnesota and how that may have contributed to the legislative majorities that you'll likely face in 2017?
Well, the polls showed that he was running very strong in 8th, 7th, and 2nd and 1st districts. That appeal to Greater Minnesota, the trade issue. It's one of the issues that propelled him both nationally and here in Minnesota. A lot of people, feeling very worried again economically, certainly up on the Iron Range. Although Rick Nolan, to his credit, great credit, won re-election because he championed the cause of the people up there who were being affected. Farmer income is down. I mean, again, there's a general theme that we don't want to continue the status quo economically. We want change. We want someone to make it better. And he persuaded people, especially out in those regions of the state, that and very close to the majority of the people who voted in Minnesota, that he was going to be able to do that, knew how to do that, and now it's his opportunity to do so.
Governor, how concerned are you about the vote counting delays in Dakota County that took until super early this morning, almost till the sun rose again, to come up with results?
I don't know the facts of it. I gather they put in some new election technology or apparatus, whatever. I mean, I mean, there's no doubt this election was handled properly in Minnesota. There's no question that the results are valid and will be validated. There may be some automatic recounts because of the closeness, but I have complete faith that Dakota County, even though it has those glitches, pulled together and is accurately reflecting the electorate in that county.
You said you were concerned about the state's economy. What gives you that concern, considering metrics are going, I guess, will be going in a positive direction?
Concerned about what? The state's
economy.
Economy.
Yes, sir.
Well, the country has recovered slowly from the Great Recession, but median family income in Minnesota is low, real dollars, is lower than it was in 2000. We've recovered barely real income levels prior to the Great Recession, but the country as a whole is not. So people are feeling worse off, and many people are in fact worse off economically than they were 10 or 15 years ago. And the promise of America, especially for people who work hard, who play by the rules, who do everything they're supposed to do, is that there's going to be progress, and they're going to be part of that, and their kids and grandkids are going to be part of that. And that promise has been attenuated now. We'll see if we can restore it. Again, Minnesota's done relatively better than the country, but the country as a whole, again, 3-1 wrong track. In Minnesota, the last polls I saw was slightly right direction. But it's still, a lot of people are very, very distressed about their economic condition and what the future holds.
Governor, For the second election in a row now, Democrats have been competitive in the suburbs, falling a little short in some places, but gotten blown out in rural areas. The Senate this year lost most of the DFL's rural seats after losing most of the House's rural seats 2 years ago. What are your thoughts on the future of the Democrats outside of the metro area in Minnesota?
Well, we'll have to look very, very closely at that and what the electorate there is telling us. I don't have an answer to that today, but there's no question that that's become a Republican stronghold, as I said, in the legislative races. In the 8th, despite Congressman Nolan's success, Senator Saxhog, Representative Anzel, and then you look at the 7th, where even Congressman Peterson's margin of victory was less than usual, and in the 1st, where Congressman Wall's margin was much less than usual. And again, I'd like to see how the correlation between how President-elect Trump did in those districts and legislative candidates, and see how much it is attributable to people voting for him, and how much you can ascribe to the legislative dynamics itself. I don't have all those answers today, but it's certainly a matter of concern.
Governor, have you spoken to Speaker Dowd or Senator Bach about what happened last night and the path forward on a special session?
I called Speaker Dowd, got his voicemail, and left him a message congratulating him on his keeping the majority, and saying, as I just said, that I need to hear from him and Senator Bach how they want to proceed with the special session, and I'm still agreeable to having one. I just need to know whether they agree with the plan I put forward, or whether they have a better plan, or whether they don't want to pursue it. But I'll proceed. However, if they both express a willingness and desire to hold a special session and focus on that one issue, providing that rebate or something like it to people who are suffering these very high insurance increases, then we can proceed together. If we're going to get involved in all the other rhetoric about, MNsure and the Affordable Care Act and all the other, things that they couldn't agree on last spring and couldn't agree on all summer, then, I'm not interested in pursuing this any further.
As a quick follow-up, were you surprised by Senator Hann's loss last night, and did it have anything to do with Southwest Light Rail? And what is the future of Southwest Light Rail now that Republicans control the House and Senate, or will soon?
Well, I don't have the details. My own reaction is it has a lot to do with the Southwest Light Rail. The polls in his district show that by more than 2 to 1 people there supported the Southwest Light Rail. And I know that was his loss. There was an exception to the norm in that vicinity of the region. So I attribute it very much. I mean, people want Southwest Light Rail, and again, the Republicans have teed off against it and used that to their advantage in greater Minnesota, where they had tried to persuade people and persuaded successfully a lot of people that that $1 billion in federal money was being taken from their highway projects and going to the Southwest Light Rail. But as I said before, Republicans have offered no alternative, except more congestion on our metro highways. And anybody thinks that's in the best interest of this region and our state is seriously deluded. So, it comes down again that, they want to be against light rail. Well, what's their alternative? What's their better alternative? Show me a route. With rapid bus transit that could follow the route from Eden Prairie to downtown Minneapolis. You're going to go up Highway 100 or 394, which are already over congested, and then try to weave through. I mean, it's not viable.
Is it too late for them to try to stop it?
Nothing's ever too late. We'll see. I'm not gonna throw down a gauntlet, but I am going to say to them, if you want to eliminate Southwest and Bottineau light rail, then you've got to come up with an alternative, or you're not being responsible. You've got to offer more rent. 750,000 more people living in the metropolitan area in the next 25 years, and we'll put them all on the highways. I mean, we all drive around now to know how overly congested they are and how much worse it's become. And it's going to be much, much worse if we don't develop a viable public transit system.
Governor, what do you take from 2011 into 2017, and how might you personally handle things differently with a second go-around at an all-Republican legislature? I look back on 2011, and I offered to meet at the 50-yard line, and I kept waiting there. They hugged to the goal line. And despite the shutdown, my approval rating went up, and their approval rating was 21%.
So, I mean, I think people in Minnesota recognized in 2011 that they were the extremists and they were unwilling to compromise. And that's what people want. They want a resolution. They don't want to shut down. They want us to reach an agreement, and we both give up some things we want, and in order to serve the best interests of the state. I'm willing to do that again. And I hope that they've learned the lesson. We'll see.
My question is very much like his, but just overall, do the election returns mean you have to do something different, whether it's legislation or any offering different budget proposals or anything?
Well, my sons are my best critics, and they remind me daily of things I need to do better. I certainly need to do a better job of communicating to Minnesotans where I believe the state needs to go, and working to build, hopefully, a working majority in both the Minnesota House and Senate. If it's going to be just a partisan divide again, where the caucuses in each House and Senate are going to just be adamant and hold everybody to strict account, Republican caucuses, it's going to be difficult. But again, I'm willing, and I think proven in the past, I believe that I'm willing to work cooperatively and constructively, and I'm going to start down that path and hope that others will join me.
Governor, where does this leave the debate over long-term fixes to the individual healthcare market? The rebate proposal is still on the table, but more long-term, Republican legislature, might have different ideas about what to do with the market.
Well, and they certainly do. Again, we're governed by a federal law, the Affordable Care Act. They can abolish MNsure, and then we would go to the federal exchange, and they need to look carefully, we all do, at whether that's in the best interests of Minnesotans or not. I'm open-minded to that because I want what's best for Minnesotans. But I don't want to, then you get out to Washington with President Trump and a Republican Congress. If you follow their rhetoric, their campaign promises, they're going to abolish the Affordable Care Act. The question is, what are they going to put in its place? Are they going to leave any of these protections that are really important to people? Are they going to throw all that out? We're going to go back to what we had before, which is Darwinian. Everybody's on their own. Everybody tries to figure out an insurance policy. Don't read the fine print because the fine print's incomprehensible. Because I've tried to read these policies, and then one of their family members gets sick, they get sick, and they find out it's not covered. And over half the personal bankruptcies in this country were caused because people couldn't afford their health costs that they, in most cases, thought were insured, and found out to their great distress after too late they weren't. So the question is, what are the Republicans in Washington going to do to, and whether the result of that is going to be lower insurance rates, we'll see. But that will dictate the parameters of what we can or can't do here in Minnesota. The things that we can do, that Commissioner Rothman's talking with the insurance companies, we can do here to make this a more attractive environment for them. See if we can get Blue Cross Blue Shield to come back in and expand the market. We'll certainly look and talk with them and see what we can do within the parameters of the existing law, federal law. And we'll do everything that we possibly can. I'm committed to do that. I'll work with the Republicans to do that. I'll work with the insurance companies to do that. I don't want to see a repeat of these kind of price escalations, which have again made the Affordable Care Act unaffordable for increasing numbers of Minnesotans, and that's a tragedy. But again, we'll have to see what is going to happen in Washington, which will define our parameters. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.